Right. So we will just wait for some questions to start rolling in. Until then, feel free to ask me anything with regards to aerospace engineering. So I'm getting a question, what ignited your passion towards rocket science? So I was in ninth standard and I was a fairly average student who was not the most studious in class. But I was really interested in space and reading about astronauts and rockets and space shuttles. And this is back in 2003, where there was a accident. There was an accident in which a space shuttle had exploded when it was coming back from space. And there was a very famous astronaut on that space shuttle. It is Kalpana Chawla. She was an Indian origin NASA astronaut. And just reading about that particular mission and reading more about her and the work that she did to become an astronaut, I think really piqued my interest in aerospace. And from there, it was just slowly and steadily reading as much as I could about the different missions, the Apollo missions, reading about the International Space Station and the astronauts who would be sent there, and how there was always a crew of three people in space who were managing the space station. So I think that was really what made me understand that rocket science is one of the most challenging fields of study that one can take up, and it brings with it a lot of excitement. And there's also a curiosity which it is trying to fulfill by answering some unknown questions in space. So those were some of the reasons I think which really ignited my passion towards rocket science. And it's not like one discovers it overnight. It was a thought that started when I was in class 9, but it developed over time. It took some time to mature. uh, Initially you don't have a clear idea of how do you go about it. So then when I was in 11th and 12th, I read more about what are the different kinds of programs that are offered in India that helps us undertake this particular field. So rocket science is a very broad term. Everybody thinks of it as only comprising of the rocket, but there's so much more to that. Basically, when you start, it involves a lot of physics and mathematics. And when you take it up right after your 12th standard, you take up a field known as aerospace engineering, which is another word for saying rocket science. And aerospace engineering involves studying firstly how do different aircraft operate, how do they build aircraft, on what principle do they fly. So you study a lot about the aerodynamics, you study about propulsion systems, you study about rockets, you study about the different kinds of aspects of a aircraft, anything that is flying. And you spend the first 3 years studying about objects that are flying that require a particular atmosphere to fly through. And in the final year, the fourth year of aerospace engineering, is when you touch on some subjects with regards to space, which is rockets, and you study about satellites. So one can really choose which subjects they want to study within rocket science. So somebody can specialize in engines. So you study propulsion systems, you study different kinds of chemicals that are used as fuels. You study about the designs of different engines, different kinds of engines. And you can choose to be a structural engineer. So a person who designs the structure of the rocket, who designs the structure of any spacecraft or any satellite. So you can do that, or you can specialize in computers and software and become a software engineer who works on space missions. So these are some of the technical subjects that you can take up. But there are also non-technical and non-scientific subjects that can be taken up. For example, you can study design. Uh, the entire design process of a mission can be studied, which does not require a lot of mathematics and physics, but it requires the study of different principles of design. You can take up you can also take up subjects like law and public policy, because there are a lot of people who work in space agencies as lawyers, as policymakers. So there you study the history of different missions, and you study the different kinds of aspects of aerospace engineering from a reporting or a policy making perspective. So these are the different kinds of subjects one has to take up. And then you start with some general subjects, depending on what level you are at. If you're after 12th standard, you normally take up either science or engineering or design, or like I said, law, or you know, communication even. And then you can further get into it. Majority of the people who study aerospace engineering are people who take up science and mathematics. But it doesn't have to be that. It really depends on that. So another question I have received is why astrobiology in particular? Why not other avenues of in astronomy? So personally, I think I was really excited by the prospect of whether life exists in this universe or not. So that was one of the main reasons why I was studying aerospace engineering. And the transition from aerospace engineering to astrobiology, I think, was where I realized my true calling within the field. That this is one area where I would like to contribute and put my efforts. So there are a lot of interesting topics within space to study, and everybody has their own personal choices. For me personally, the key question that I found, which was the most motivating, was answering whether there is life outside of Earth or not. So that was the reason why I chose to specialize in astrobiology after I finished my studies in aerospace engineering. Hi Suyash, hope you're good and safe in Thailand. All right. Please ask as many questions as you like. I'll be online for another 15, 20 more minutes. So it's a good question. What is the future of spacework opportunities in India? So traditionally, it's been government labs and agencies, mainly ISRO, which has different centers all across India where you can work in different capacities. But recently, we've also had a lot of private players, private companies that have started in the last 10 years or so, mainly around Bangalore and Hyderabad. So these are companies like Bellatrix Aerospace, um, Dhruva, um, Shadshore. There are many small companies. Even some of the traditional aerospace manufacturing companies are now venturing into space. So L&T, Godrej, Paris Defense and Space, and now even Reliance has opened its aerospace, division. So there are a lot of opportunities in India now opening up, especially with the government's recent Make in India campaigns. There's been a lot of push for private players to open, to have collaborations with foreign aerospace companies and opening of manufacturing plants in India, production units in India for different projects, aerospace as well as purely space. So the next few years, 5 to 6 years, are very promising for India in terms of opportunities outside of the government as well as within the government. Recently, we've seen the announcement for a human spaceflight mission within ISRO. So there are a lot of opportunities within ISRO that will open up as well. The number of people who will be hired will also increase over time. So in terms of institutions, there's obviously if you're looking at engineering, there's the Indian Institute of Technology uh, all across India. So there is biotechnology, there is aerospace engineering, there's in electronics, mechanical, all of these are the different relevant fields that you can take up. And specifically for aerospace engineering, there's IIT Bombay and Indian Institute of Science Bangalore, and private universities such as Amity University, where I currently work, are also very recent but equally of high caliber when it comes to studying aerospace engineering at undergraduate, postgraduate, or even PhD level in India. So I have a question from Kawaljeet. Coming from biotechnology background, how can I proceed to rocket science field as the projects have specific requirements such as aerospace engineering and astrobiology as major? So depending on what your current role is, are you a student? If you're a student, then you should try to do a master's and get some background in specific subjects, depending on what you want to do. If you want to get into astrobiology, you should really look at joining some projects. In fact, I can share some links as well of current people who are looking for scientists who are looking for students to do work in astrobiology. So one organization which I'm also affiliated with is called Blue Marble Space. So Blue Marble Space every summer remotely hosts summer interns where students from across the world work on astrobiology projects, and they can have different backgrounds. So you have to basically transition from biotechnology into astrobiology. So if you want to do that, you need to really start focusing on picking up some projects and learning the particular skill set. So depending on what you want to do, if you want to focus on the molecular biology side of things, then you have to learn the particular kind of techniques, whether that is lab technique or if it is software techniques, modeling astrobiology background. And as you build more and more experience, you can formalize it in the form of, like I said, a master's in astrobiology, um, and or if you want to go into further research, you can also take up a PhD, and that would be one way to transition into astrobiology. So the question is there one portal where I can find all the knowledge required to know more about rocket science, aerospace courses, and work opportunities? So unfortunately, there isn't one portal. So you have a lot of information that is distributed across different websites. Spaceflight now is a good website that I tend to visit. There's also space.com. So these are two international websites that are run quite well, mainly out of the US, that offer a lot of information on space. And if you are on social media, you should definitely try to subscribe to popular space agency channels like NASA or European Space Agency, and definitely subscribe to my channel, Space for All. I will be putting out content more regularly, hopefully from now onwards, every week, and talking a bit more about aerospace engineering, astrobiology, space sciences. So, and this would be customized for people within India who are really, really interested in the field and would like to know more. So we'll try to get you access to people from different countries who've got different backgrounds in space engineering, and we'll try to also do some podcasts, talk to different people, and get their perspectives as well. So I'd be happy to talk about my projects, the ones that I'm working with right now. So yeah. Abhigyan asks me, I am now in class 10. What should I do from now to become a rocket scientist or like you? So I think I think you're already doing a lot because I know you are. You should just keep yourself excited and passionate about whatever you like to do. And slowly, steadily, your path will become clearer and clearer as to which direction you want to go. So just do well at whatever subjects you like at school. Just make sure that you are very sincere towards those subjects. Definitely, maths and science are two subjects which you need to be having a good aptitude for if you are going in for aerospace engineering. I'm sure just be very focused towards it and keep reading as much as you can. read novels. There's a novel by James Missioner called Space. I think I read it when I was in 11th standard. So there are a lot of good books out there. Try to read about the astronauts, read the biographies of these people, to keep yourself inspired and energized towards aerospace engineering. It always helps. It keeps you in a very good mood. And for someone who's really interested in space, uh, it comes very naturally. So the more you read about these people, you watch some nice movies. Right now with the lockdown, you should try to watch more movies, read more books online, try to catch as much of information as you can. Maintain a small journal as well. Write down your thoughts, how your thoughts are maturing and proceeding, and just relax. Don't worry too much about it. I think slowly and steadily everything comes into place. I share the link for the international summer interns? Yes, I can. I will put it into the comment box for people. I think the deadline is 15th of April, so you should definitely try to apply for it. It's called the Young Scientist Program, and it's a great way to find yourself into astrobiology or space sciences. And feel free to share this link with others. I'll be online for a little more time. I'm seeing there is a small group of you who are there with me right now. So happy to answer more questions. So feel free to share this link with other parents, students who would be interested to ask questions. So the next question is, those who are from arts or legal background and interested in astronomy and astrophysics, do you think they have a career option in this field? So in India, the opportunities are limited. But having said that, there are opportunities within the government as well as uh, in some think tanks like Observer Research Foundation has a space desk where they do write on. Have a few people who have legal background who work within ISRO. So opportunities are limited in India, but they're definitely there. So for someone, and in fact, this is a field which ISRO does need a lot of help with right now because there's a lot of space policy documents that are being proposed as well as put together. And there's a blanket kind of a very generic um, document that is floating around, which is not very customized to space. And many people have problems with that. So I definitely feel that one should write to people within ISRO who are having this background, especially people who are having a law background within ISRO. You should write to them and seek out opportunities as and when they come by. So there might be some internship opportunities where you can start, and it will give you an idea as to how the job is, and it might open up more opportunities to join. So ISRO is there. There's also a defense version of ISRO which has recently been commissioned. That is the other one. And then of course there is Ministry of Civil Aviation. There's the Department of Space in Delhi. So there's several government nodal organizations which deal with space and would be having people from the legal background standpoint. So yeah, good question. So Kawaljeet asks, are there any international scholarships to study masters in astrobiology? So this question really depends on which university you're targeting. Some universities will be having and some will not be having. So I will share with you another page. which will give you information on the different colleges where you can study astrobiology outside of India. So unfortunately, right now in Amity, we do not have a astrobiology program. We do have astrobiology research, but not a program yet. But we do, through Blue Marble Space, maintain a website called astrobiologyindia.in, and there's a list of colleges there. Let me just share it right now. Um, and there are also links to their individual department websites that you can visit. And you can find out more information. You can also write directly to the professors or the admission departments, and they can give you more information about their study programs. So yeah, I really encourage you to apply for scholarships to the government to government departments as well. For example, if there's a college in the United States which you are interested in, you should look at. There are several fellowships between US and India. So US India fellowships. You should try to Google US India fellowships, and that will take you to several pages that will give you more information about how you can apply for scholarships for masters or PhD and those kind of things. So Abhigyan asks me, are there any seminars in which school children like me can join related to rocket science or can join after my 10th vacation? So you'll have to really keep an eye out for seminars. There isn't one calendar of events, unfortunately, that I can directly point you towards. But if you have signed up to um, newsletters from any international or national outlets, like national, there are not so many, but internationally, you have like within ISRO, there are several different activities that are constantly taking place every week. So most of them will be having a newsletter which you can sign up for. And nowadays, because of this current lockdown situation, there will be a lot of different kinds of um, online podcasts or webinars taking place. So you'll have to really sign up for some of those newsletters or subscriptions, and you'll be notified on your email for any upcoming event. You should definitely also subscribe to my channel. I'll try to see if I can find ways in which I can list some of those seminars and have discussions here as well. So that's pretty much the thing. So Heyman asked me, what literature do you suggest for having a good understanding on astrobiology? So it really depends on what level of astrobiology you want to get into. I can recommend you a book um, called Indica. It's a book that I'm reading right now, and it's written by Dr. Pranay Lal. He is himself a biochemist, and he works at the Institute of Lung and Tuberculosis. I think that's the name of the institute. Anyways, so he has written this fantastic book on India's natural history, and it's such a good book that talks about how did India as a subcontinent evolve over billions of years, and how did life start here. And he's spoken about some of the oldest living organisms that we've had in India, and how they have been preserved in rocks. And he's given incidents of different places all around India and linked them. So for someone who is just interested in the fun aspects of astrobiology, I think it's a great book to start off with. If you're interested in uh, textbooks kind of knowledge of astrobiology, I can also send you a link. I'll in fact post it right here, which we normally keep for a lot of our students. That will give you kind of like a starting point. Actually, it's that same link which I've just shared. If you can scroll up, let me post it again for you. So there's a link that I'd shared which had information on the different universities. But if you scroll down on that same link, finding free course material to access and look at. There are other textbooks as well, which I could recommend, but I'm not sure how, unless and until you have a library at home, I'm not sure how you'll be getting access to those. But there are some really good textbooks out there on astrobiology as well. But most of them are normally not available easily in India. They have to be ordered in, mostly from the US. All right, so I get a question from Zach Inc. Which are the good aerospace companies to get into in India? So, aerospace is dominated by government organizations in India in terms of numbers of people working in aerospace. So, if you're looking at government sector, there's obviously the Indian Space Research Organization, there's uh, Defense Research Development Organization (DRDO). There's several institutions that offer different positions in aerospace. There's collaborative ventures like Pramos. In the private sector, of late, in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of information available now on opportunities. So there's companies such as Tata, Mahindra, Reliance, they all have collaborations with foreign aerospace companies and have opened, uh, right from design all the way to manufacturing, assembly lines in India. So a lot of private companies are now coming in. There's also a lot of startup companies now in India in the last few years that have started getting contracts and building, things like small components of spacecraft, different kinds of thrusters, even small satellites for ISRO. So, so there's it's a really exciting time now. I think the next 5 to 6 years we will be seeing a lot of opportunity. As Jessica Meyer got, would you go on board the ISS? Of course I would, without thinking twice about it. I think anyone who loves aerospace would not pass the opportunity of experiencing, uh, getting out of Earth gravity, experiencing microgravity, looking at the Earth from that distance, looking at space. Definitely would, without a doubt. I don't think anybody would say no to that. So, yes, the answer is yes. And another thing I should really add is that a lot of people feel that this is a field where you only can get in after 12th standard or after undergraduate. I think that's a big misconception. You can get in at any point of time in your life, pretty much. I've seen people who have started aerospace engineering when they were 50 years old, 60 years old. And I've seen people who have done it right in the middle of their careers at 35, 40 years as well. It all depends on your interest, what kind of experience you are willing to pick up along the way and transition. And you can get into it right after your college. You can get into it after a few years of experience from a different field and then transitioning into it as well. In India, it's slightly harder because the job application processes are quite narrow. So they ask specifically for a particular education when you're applying. The eligibility criteria are quite tight. But having said that, it's not impossible. And a lot of positions you will not even be aware of unless and until you directly write to people. So one thing that one should always do is write emails, call people, try to meet them, and discuss what kind of opportunities are there. And you'd be surprised at the kind of opportunities that can open up with your particular skill set. So don't give up hope thinking that it's something that you could only do if you studied aerospace engineering in college. No, that is not at all the case. In fact, if you look at the profiles of people right now who are heading different programs within aerospace companies, many of them would not have aerospace engineering as their education. They would probably having a business background or a technical background of a non-aerospace type. So you, there are so many different pathways into rocket science. It really depends on your interest, your experience, your willingness to get into the field. And yeah, I think that's one important thing I want people to always remember. How many branches are there basically in rocket science, and which of them can we access in India? So some of the main divisions of rocket science are you study the engines. So anything to do with engines comes under a field known as propulsion systems. So propulsion is basically meaning moving forward, propelling, and it mainly deals with the different kinds of engines and launch vehicles. So that's one discipline. The other discipline is software. So a lot of these rockets and spacecraft need to have some amount of computation on board to carry out its regular activities, operating instruments, some kind of automation. So people with computer science background, software engineering background, they basically look at the software engineering aspect of space. There's also structures. So people with a mechanical background who work on different kind of materials, who work on the different kind of, the whole load taking ability, because launching anything into space has to withstand a lot of loads because you're throwing it with a lot of energy. And when it is launching off the earth with that kind of energy, your structure needs to be really strong. Otherwise, it will collapse because of all of that energy that it is having to withstand. Also, when it is coming back into the earth, for example, it is exposed to a lot of different kinds of loads on it. So structural engineering is again very important domain within rocket science. So propulsion systems, software, structures. And there's also navigation. So one has to have a complete, clear idea of how your object is going to behave because it is a freely moving object. It is completely not having any connection with anything on ground. It is completely by itself. So you need to understand based on the shape, based on the mass distribution, how is it going to behave in space or even when it is traveling from Earth to space. So navigation and control is another very important part of it. Thermal is another very important part because when it is going into space, it is going to be exposed to either very low temperatures or if it is coming in, uh, you know, sight of the sun, it will be exposed to very high temperatures. So space can be very cold, go down to almost minus 100 degrees Celsius, 120, 130 degrees Celsius, and it can heat up to almost 400 degrees Celsius. So you have to protect your instruments, your materials from um, the different kind of heat loads. So thermal is another very important aspect of rocket science. So when you're starting off, you learn a little bit about each of these fields, and then later on you qualify yourself and specialize in one particular area, and you focus on that area for the duration of your career. So the question is, does ISRO conduct operations solely for functional purposes, satellite, GPS, weather forecast, or is it also involved? Eager to know more about the astrobiology. So yes, ISRO has not so far conducted an astrobiology mission. Having said that, the Mars mission, the first Mars orbiter mission from ISRO that launched in 2013 and reached Mars in 2014. It had an instrument that was measuring methane, which is a gas normally released by living organisms here on Earth. You see a lot of organisms once they finish the carbon dioxide, uh, they undertake respiration, they're consuming oxygen, and their bodies release gas in the form of methane. So one objective of this mission from India was to see if they can find traces of methane gas, which would indicate any kind of microscopic organisms like bacteria which have released methane gas. So in a way, you can say that it has already undertaken an astrobiology objective, ISRO. But so far, we have not seen ISRO coming out with an astrobiology mission. But currently, with our project at Amity, we are developing a biology experiment which is slated to go up on the next ISRO PSLV rocket. We have within Amity, we have developed an experiment known as space biology, Amity Space Biology Experiment, and we'll be observing how plants first biological experiment that we'll be conducting in space, you can say. And we have been given a lot of motivation and support from within ISRO to conduct similar kind of studies. So there has been some balloon experiments where ISRO has supported some experiments where they collected bacteria from very high altitudes using high altitude balloons, weather balloons, and similar to weather balloons. And these kind of experiments, I think, will keep continuing to go on. And hopefully, in the future, if we progress at Amity and we are able to do successful experiments, biology experiments, we might get an opportunity to propose an astrobiology mission as well. So far, we haven't seen one, but they are definitely interested in it, in doing more kinds of research, including astrobiology. So the next question is, have there been any major breakthroughs by private sector space companies, example SpaceX in USA? So yes, definitely SpaceX is one of the more revolutionary companies, as many of you would know about them. They have been undertaking a lot of challenging technology missions. For example, they have achieved reusing a launch vehicle where they launched a rocket. They were able to put the satellite at the end of the rocket into Earth orbit. And then a part of that launcher came back and safely landed back onto the surface, which is something which has never been done before. So it was a major breakthrough, although they still are trying to achieve more of those, um, you know, uh, reusability, create that reusability by landing those boosters. But I think that has been one major breakthrough. Another thing is bringing down cost. It's very, very expensive to launch anything into space. And a private company, by doing more launches and doing it, a private company definitely is able to work faster for lesser money than the government. So they have definitely brought down the cost of launching something into space. So that has been a major breakthrough because it has allowed more missions, more satellites, more experiments being sent into space, and increased the access. It has broadened the horizons for a lot of smaller companies and people from different countries, in fact, who do not have a space program can now work on different kinds of experiments and fly different kinds of satellites for their own benefit or their country's benefit or their company's benefit. So that is something which the private sector can very easily achieve. So far in India, we have seen companies so far develop small components at very low cost. And the fact that they are developed in India ensures that we are not reliant on other countries. So I think that has been a major breakthrough so far. And we're hopefully seeing more and more of those companies coming up that can support Indian as well as foreign space agencies as well. So the question is, can a private individual conduct a space experiment by launching vessels, payloads to space? If conducted, are there laws in India to prohibit activities of a similar nature? So if you're trying to launch something by yourself, you definitely need to register your particular mission. But beyond that, there aren't any fixed laws right now in India that can stop anyone from doing it, and it's actually quite a gray area. Um, the place where you launch it from needs to be at a certain distance from airports, from any, have it registered. But above and beyond that, I think we're in a situation where there isn't any private individual trying to launch an experiment. But if that were the case, it will be opening a can of worms, because there will be a lot of questions that will need to be answered very quickly. So a lot of companies normally launch their experiments on government or foreign launch vehicles, and they get around that problem. But if there's an Indian company that comes out and plans to do something on its own, then there'll be several laws and regulations that will have to be put in place. Are there evidence supporting directed panspermia hypothesis? So far, panspermia is a theory that states that life actually evolved in the universe and was brought in to Earth through meteorites. And there is a group of people, or at least a few groups of people, who have been working on trying to find evidence that life on Earth actually came from outer space and did not evolve on Earth. So far, we have not seen any strong evidence that has helped us confirm this particular hypothesis. There's been a lot of um, literature or reviews that have been published, but nothing has been done to the extent with which we can confirm that life did actually come from outside. In fact, the astrobiology experiment that I mentioned, which ISRO supported, also was based on the same hypothesis, where they were collecting bacteria from high altitudes, very high altitudes. And their hypothesis was that bacteria on Earth could not have gone up so high to that altitude. So if we find something at such a high altitude of say 40 kilometers above Earth, it had to be have brought in from space through meteorites, and was remnants of small meteorite particles, fragments that have remained when it entered into the Earth's atmosphere from space. It remained in the atmosphere. So they did find bacteria, but it has still not been confirmed that that bacteria was something that evolved in space and is not Earth bacteria, but space bacteria. So there's a second round of experiments in which, in fact, I'm also one of the technical consultants on this project, where we are trying to collect more bacteria samples and try to further characterize them and study their DNA to understand whether it is similar to the kind of bacteria we see on Earth, or if it is completely different. Does that mean it comes from space or not? So hopefully, if we have done more experiments, we'll be better able to confirm whether the bacteria we find at very high altitudes, whether it comes from space or whether it is from Earth, and somehow through evaporation processes or dust lifting from winds and over long periods of time, it rising up, is managed to reach so high up in the altitude. So we still do not know. All right. I think we've had a good session so far. I'm really delighted that a lot of you have asked me questions. So thank you very much for your questions. And please do subscribe to this channel. Hopefully, there'll be more fun content out that I'll be able to put out there. And we'll continue as we are in this lockdown period to have more such sessions where we can have more general discussions as well as focused discussions on space, astrobiology, aerospace, and also talk about any relevant issues that are connected with space and so on and so forth. So I'll answer last question of Hire. What fascinates you the most about the universe? I think the most fascinating part about the universe is the fact that we're all made out of material that was once something that was formed inside stars. So the carbon, the hydrogen, the nitrogen inside all our bodies is something that comes from stars, and we're all connected to each other as well as these massive, gigantic bodies because we are made of the same things. I think that is a mind blowing. So I will continue having such sessions, hopefully with better production quality and more experience as I go along. And I really like to have your support on this. And please feel free to share this link, like this video, subscribe to it, and share it with more parents, teachers, students, friends that you know of. And we'll plan out more similar sessions, and we're all together in this lockdown period. So enjoy your evening ahead. Hope you're all going to be having another relaxed Sunday and on to more fun activities wherever you are. So thanks for joining in and take care. Bye bye.